Welcome, everyone, to Liberty Talk Radio. I'm your host, Joe Cristiano, and this is your antidote to popular talk radio. Folks, it's time for us to take back control of our government now before this bureaucratic, oversized, and self-serving federal government starves us of our property, our freedom, our rights, and our liberty. To do this, we must shed conventional thinking regarding our political structure. We need to be revolutionaries in thought, dissidents in action. Only after we recognize what our government is doing to our freedom and our Constitution will we start taking it back. And this program is just about that. Well, folks, this week, I guess we all had our fill of the debate. You couldn't get away from it. If you hid in the bathroom, close the door, and you couldn't turn on the radio because you'd hear the debate. I mean, that's people commenting about the debate. It was the debate could drive you absolutely nuts. And what's really interesting about the debate is that it's all orchestrated in advance. Isn't that interesting? We have this big fall-de-la, and it's all orchestrated in advance. Now, what I find interesting is that our government officials who are being open and honest with us don't tell us that. Don't you think that at least they should tell us that there should be a disclaimer? Just like in the movies, you see a disclaimer. And the disclaimer should say, this has been pre-recorded, pre-rehearsed, pre-orchestrated, pre-everything. Don't believe a word that you are hearing. That's what they should say. If they were really honest, and you say, now, Joe, how could you possibly say that? These guys get up there and they duke it out. No, they're not duking it out. Please understand something this has got to make this very clear to everyone out there, is the fact that if, in fact, they duked it out, if, in fact, they were being honest with one another, and they actually placed in front of the viewer or the voter the facts, they would, in fact, discredit each one, and they would discredit each other. Not only discredit, but they would disqualify each other for running for office. Think about that. They would disqualify each other for even running for office. In other words, people will say, sorry, I'd like to vote, but these two guys are not qualified. He brings up a good point. He brings up a good point. They're both disqualified. Ball games. I'm going to watch a football game. Think about that. And once you disqualify the people going to be the heads of the free world from office, you discredit the whole system. Once you discredit the entire system, the ball game's over. The ruling elite, which are the bankers, the ruling elite lose. You say, well, how could they lose? They have all the money. They control the money. Well, it's a matter of mass. There's too many of us and too few of them. Just think about that, folks. Just think for a moment. If everyone said to themselves, I think this is phony. This is reality show. This is entertainment. It's not real. Everyone thought that way. What would the government do? Toast. You don't need a revolution. You don't have to go out into the street with pitchforks in hand, banging pots and pans to make noise. It would be a silent revolution. People would turn off the debate, turn on Dancing with the Stars. We'd all be happier. Now, folks, that is reality. That is the true reality. And what is amazing to me is that the solution to our problems is so simple. Our elected officials talk about all of the nation's problems of education, the environment, terrorism, war overseas. Well, I have a secret for you folks. They ain't my problems. Do you know why? I didn't cause them. I have no beef with Afghanistan. I have no beef with Iran. I have no beef with Israel. I have no beef with Saudi Arabia. I have no beef with China. Bingo, not my problem. Not my problem. Now, if everyone in the United States thought the same way and said, you said it's a problem? It's your problem, Mr. President. It's your problem. It's not my problem. Oh, you want to take my son, put him in a uniform, teach him how to kill, and then bring him overseas to be your slave, your drone? I don't think so. What do you think would happen? You see, any time we vote for these clowns, we, in fact, endorse what they are doing. We legitimize what they are doing. We give them the power. They have no power. They have no power whatsoever. Not one iota of power. But when we go to the polls and we vote for them, we empower them. They can't empower themselves. In history, any time a populace has become so fed up, I mean, they've just had it and had it and had it to a point where they get to a boiling point and take to the streets, what happens? The people in office flee. They don't try to reason with them. They flee because they know the ball game's up. It's over. And when are the people in the United States going to say to themselves, the ball game is over? Folks, I'd like to hear from you. I'd like to hear your opinion. 855-866-1170. Send us your email to comments@libertytalkradio.com. And remember, visit our website, which is libertytalkradio.com. Everything's there. You can get to this station, the internet broadcast, everything's there. libertytalkradio.com. But just think about that. It doesn't take a violent revolution or anything. All it does is it requires us to think rationally. You see, I'm from the planet Zorg. In the planet Zorg, everyone thinks critically and speaks logically. If you're ever caught, the only major crime, is that when you're speaking non-critically and speak illogically. If you're ever caught doing that, as I was, right? It happened to me. They put you on a space vehicle right off the planet, and they send you to planet Earth. And see, the planet Earth is the insane asylum for the planet Zorg. Understand where we are, and I'm one of you. I mean, I'm one of them. I'm not criticizing anyone in particular. I'm criticizing myself. I really blew it. I sounded like an Earthling on Zorg right off the planet. And now we all have to live together. That's why I'm on the radio. I'm pleading with the true citizens of Zorg who live on this planet. Let's start thinking again. Let's replicate how we think on the planet Zorg, where we think critically and speak logically. Very, very rarely does that happen. Listen to radio talk shows. Is that logical? Nah, it's banter. Come on, folks, you know. It makes great listening while you're driving. Logical? Hell no. In most cases, it's not. I don't care what end of the spectrum you're on. So when we talk about change for what? I don't want to change anything. I like who I am. I love my wife, my kids. I mean, I have no problem. I don't want to change. And when these clowns tell me this nation has these problems, I say, excuse me, ain't my problems, didn't create them, want no part of them.
They're your problems. Did I cause the problem in Afghanistan? Did I cause the problem in Iraq? Did I have anything? I had absolutely nothing to do with it. In fact, if it was up to me, I would be trading with them, speaking with on the telephone with them. How you doing, guys? How's things going over there? You know? And any way I could help them out, I would. Any way that they can help me out, they would. Be no war. What's wrong with that? Oh, I'm in bed with a terrorist. Oh, come on. Please, terrorists. Come on. And all we do when we vote is we empower these clowns to perpetuate this insanity that gets us deeper and deeper, and we abdicate more and more of our liberties for our protection, because if it wasn't for them, and I hate when they talk about this nation has problems. I said, I have a problem too. This morning I put on a shirt, a button fell off. That was my problem. Now, how is the government going to solve that problem? The button came right off. The cotton threads were too thin. That's my problem. Unemployment? Not my problem. I'm employed. It's not my problem. The guy next door is unemployed? That is his problem. It's not the government's problem. When are we going to stop looking at towards these clowns and say, we vote for me and I'll solve the unemployment problem and I'll solve the... No, you're not. You created the problem. These guys create... And the worst part of the whole thing, and I know I repeat myself. I'm surprised I don't get calls and people say, will you stop repeating yourself? I can't stand you anymore. Is that when they do that and we're listening, we are giving to them our most precious asset. And that precious asset, which we all have in common, I don't care if you're a king, I don't care who you are, you're a kid in school, don't care if you're down and out, drunk by seaside, I don't care. And that's our time. We all have a limited amount of time. And let me tell you, folks, I'm near 70 years old now, and time goes faster as you get older. And you become more and more conscious of the time that you spend, the time that you have. I love to look 50 years in advance. Unlikely. When I was 20, 40, 50 years, sure, I'll do this, and that. Now I'm looking at a time frame of maybe 10 or 20 years. With luck, with a lot of luck, by the way, tremendous amount of luck, 10 years. See, my time becomes more and more valuable. But actually, it's as valuable equally with everyone at every point in their lives, even when a baby's only 2 months old. And what we do is we take our most valuable asset and we spend all week listening to these clowns debating of who won the debate and who did what, because politics has become it's a reality show and a religion. Could you imagine if we discussed religion every day? I mean, different religions every day on television? It would be insane. Religion is a belief system. You can't argue a belief system. I believe this. So you believe it, you believe it. If I believe cows flies, I believe cows fly. I mean, that's it. They may not fly, but I believe it. It's a belief system. What we've done, we've relegated politics to a belief system because it's become part of our lives, just as our religions have become part of our lives. It is time for us to maybe get a little bit more involved in our religion and get less involved in our politics. There's nothing wrong with having a deep-felt belief in God. Nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with having absolutely no belief in God. That is your choice. What is wrong is having a belief in politics. That is a bad religion. Okay, let's take a break. You know, folks, We talk about all. We've been talking all week. Oh, we have a call. Let's take our caller first. Dave, you're on
Hey,
the
how you
air.
doing?
Dave,
Thanks
fine.
for
How are
taking
you?
my call. I just wanted to make a quick comment
Please.
on the show this week and last week too. Now, last week I wasn't able to call in because I was heading to work and I was running a little late. But I listen to your show every Sunday morning, and I just wanted to comment. You started in on the right thing, on the right path this morning about talking about religion and all of that. But I know, just to comment on last week, you had mentioned something about how the people here in Oklahoma need to be more resistive or more challenging to the government, or something like that. I think, do you remember saying that last week or something like that?
I don't remember what I had for breakfast this morning, Dave. But go ahead. If you said I said it, I said it. Absolutely.
All right. Well, I just wanted to comment. You're hinting on some right things about liberty and freedoms, and stuff like that. And what I was really wanted to comment on was how that the real difference between the United States and the rest of the world that you're commenting all about last week as well as this week is that the government of the United States is really an extension of. If you go back in the history, way back, even before we became the United States, when we were just a bunch of colonies, the government actually was a branch of coming out of the Protestant Christian church, which is very unique. See, there's no other government like that in the world.
Okay.
Most of the governments in the world, including Europe, came out of the Catholic Church. So the way they govern is similar to what they had set in fashion. Now, I know in England we had the big revolt with the king. The king took over the church and became the head of the church. And so they had that thing there going on. But that was a somewhat protest. But the real Protestant church was against the not only the king of England, but the Catholic Church and that. So
Right.
that's where this government and these liberties are actually coming from.
Okay.
And so if you take it from that perspective, that's what makes it unique. And I think what you're looking for is that's what we've really lost. What we've really lost a lot is this, this looking at life and looking at government, governing from this, coming out of the Protestant church.
Okay.
Just
Yeah.
a little help there.
Yeah. Good point. Hey, Dave. Let me send me an email to comments@libertytalkradio.com with a mailing address and a T-shirt size. You need to be wearing a Liberty Talk Radio T-shirt when you call in. Okay.
Will do.
Okay.
Will
Hey,
do.
thanks
for
a bit.
taking my call. I got to head to work.
All right, get that,
Talk to
make
you
some
soon.
money. Thanks, Dave. Bye. It's interesting. We do. We have different backgrounds in how we evolve, but the end result is all the same, isn't it, folks? We've talked so much about what was discussed during the debates. They say it's the seen versus the unseen. If you read much about Austrian economics, which is the valid economics that we should be following, which our government does not follow, they follow Keynesian economics, which is a bogus economics, the design promulgated probably during the Depression, which made things worse. But it's not really what is seen, it is what is unseen. For example, when the government does something, they say, oh, we're going to do this, and it's not what you see, it's the unintended consequences that you don't see. And it's always important to try to see what is unseen. In this case, it's not what was debated during the last debate. What was not debated during the last debate. For example, if I was Romney, all I had to do was sit there and put down and read out John Jones, 19 years old, legs blown off. Harriet Smith, killed in action. Just read off names like that. In the very first part of the debate would have been over. Because then reality would have hit home. But we don't do that. We're actually very polite. Oh, yeah, it sounds like they're really jockeying back and forth, but that is decided ahead of time. It's what is not debated, and what was not debated is what is truly important to us. For example, hey, what about the Patriot Act? We need to rescind that. We need to throw it away, trash it. The whole thing, we need to trash Homeland Security, all of that crap, because all it does is monitor the citizens and not terrorists. Because, first of all, we're the terrorists around the world. Everyone considers us the terrorists. We're the only ones that consider everybody else the terrorist. It's like me walking around absolutely crazy out of my mind telling the rest of the world that they're crazy. And everyone's looking at me and say, no, you got that wrong. You're the nutcake. You see, folks, we've got to see what is the unseen, the unintended consequences, what is not being said. And we shouldn't waste so much of our time doing that. I'll bet many, many people have spent a good portion of the week viewing, reviewing, reviewing, rehashing the debate last week, which meant absolutely nothing. They stole an entire week of your time. How dare they? No, how dare you allow them to do that? Now, I watched 10 minutes of the debate because my wife said, you will watch the debate, you have a radio program. On Sunday morning, you've got to do that. And so I watched 10 minutes of it, and that's all I did. And I just got up and I got sick and walked away. You know, folks, we have so much. We have so much, and we give so much away. We have our time, and we give it away. We're looking for this mandate. You know, let's get a mandate. If we have a mandate, we'll know where to go. We're looking for a leader. You know, which person is the best leader? You know, I don't need a leader. I want to be left alone. I am my leader. My wife is her leader. We are each other's leaders. We can help each other out. I don't want someone to tell me what to do, where to go, and what war to fight. I will determine that myself. When are we going to realize that we do not need anyone to lead us? When they were in covered wagons crossing the United States, you think they said, well, geez, let's turn on the radio or television and see what our leader says we should be doing? No, they took it upon themselves. That is the true American spirit. Let's go for our break. Folks, we're back, and we do have a caller. Let's take them. They've been holding for some time. Mark, you're on the air.
Yeah, you was talking about reducing the size of government. What would be your preferred method of doing it?
Oh, easy.
Standing out in the street throwing rocks at them just ain't going to work.
No government at all, Mark. That's my answer. You know, my answer is, I'm very truthfully. I mean, I'm not being facetious. I'm not being funny. I'm not being snotty or argumentative. Self-government. You know, I do a darn good job of self-governing. Ask my wife. She says, you know, you're the most critical person of yourself that I've ever seen in my life. Self-government is the best way to go. And the only
I understand that, but unfortunately we're stuck with these Ignaces that's up there in office. Now, how do we get rid of them?
Well, all right, let me give you something. All right. Do you know only 62% of the people right now vote? 62% of the people vote. Now, look at this. And let's assume for a second it's a close race. Let's say almost 50, 48, 52, whatever. So 62% of the vote. That means the person who gets in had a mandate of 32%. That's less than 1/3 of the population. You know, we have no mandate. We have no government representing the people because only 1/3 of the people voted for that clown in the first place. You know, the best way to do it is to stop listening to the government and start becoming independent yourself in every single way that you can. Stop voting, number one. Just absolutely stop voting.
Even if you don't vote, 270 votes to Electoral College, it's going to put another nutcase in there.
Right. But if you vote, you perpetuate the system. I know it's a tough thing to do, and you and I are not going to change it. If you and I did exactly what I'm saying, we're not going to do it. It's only going to happen when this grows. You know, I encourage everyone to watch a video on the internet. It's called the Thrive Movement. I had on my internet show last week Foster Gamble. He's the great-great-grandson of the famed Procter & Gamble company. He's a dropout, basically. He went to Princeton, visited with presidents, everything. He was the top-notch to your people, right? And he said, hey, there's too many problems in this world, and they're real problems, and governments are not solving them. And he literally dropped out and started the Thrive Movement, trying to solve problems around the world, just like this. And let me tell you something. I have to agree with what he has to say. You know, I have to agree. We cannot solve the problem by continually endorsing the people who create the problem. Very simple. And it seems it's so insignificant that if you drop out, oh, I'm one of millions. Yeah, you're one of millions. The next person is 2 of millions. The next person is 3 of millions. Look what happened, what they call the Arab Spring. People were just Facebooking each other, twitting each other in Egypt. And all of a sudden, millions of people took to the street. And they didn't even know they were there. They didn't know each other. So, in my opinion, you just drop out. And you do for yourself. Thanks a lot for calling, Mark. Folks, you have any questions, 855-866-1170. That's 855-866-1170. If your comments, your compliments, but even your criticisms, please give a call. I'll try not to bite your head off. I don't try not to make anyone wrong. Your email, anyway, to comments at libertytalkradio.com. And if you do call in this morning, because it's a cool morning, if you call in this morning, I'll give you a Liberty Talk Radio T-shirt. My compliments, okay, for calling in. Just send me your and anyone who calls. Excuse me. Yeah, and Mark, please send me your comments at libertytalkradio.com. Okay, it's people say, well, how do you end all of these conflicts around the world? Well, we have to protect America. We need the troops there. No, folks, you see, that's what you have been led to believe. That's part of the reality show. This is you've taken the blue pill and now you've bought into the system. And that's the illusion that you are living in. Let me tell you the reality. Let me tell you what would really happen. If we withdrew all of our troops from the Middle East, I know they say, oh, then they'd attack us. No, they wouldn't. You know what would happen? They would attack each other. The only reason why the groups in the Middle East have coalesced is because they have a common enemy. And who's that common enemy? Could you guess? I'll give you one try. It's us. We're the common enemy. If we left Afghanistan, if we left Iraq, if we left everyone, you know what would happen? They would turn on each other. Then the left wing and the right wing and the Sunnis and they would all go. You say, oh, it would disrupt oil. It would disrupt oil. Absolutely. It's going to happen anyway. It might as well do it without our bloodshed and with us holding the cards at the very end. You see? Now, if you want to know my solution to all of this antagonism toward the United States, and even you want to say Christendom, right? I'll tell you what the answer is. 3 little words. One's an acronym, right? Rock and roll. I'll tell you what happens. I know it sounds silly. Oh, Joe, now you're fooling around. Stop pulling stop yanking my chain. Just think of this. During the Cold War, when we had Radio Free Europe and all that stupid stuff, that did nothing. You know what did something? When the people who were growing up, the young teenagers, started to listen to Western rock and roll, they thought it was the neatest thing. And they became a little rebellious, some very rebellious. They really wanted, during the Nazi occupation before World War II, it was the swingers. The Nazis were trying to get rid of the swingers, which were the pre-rock and roll people, because these were the kids who didn't care for war. They didn't care for dictatorships. They wanted to be left alone, and they should have been left alone, and they became swingers. They had to have parties in basements and secret places and play swing music and dance and have a good time. And they were rebelling against their own government, all of their government, both the Nazi and the traditional government. And if we did the same thing would happen. It's historic. It happens every year. What would happen is that in one generation you would have hardcore, let's say you have hardcore Islamic traditionalists, if you will, hardcore, and then the people growing up, rock and roll, let's have free and this and that. All of a sudden, the next generation wouldn't be so hardcore. Maybe they'd still be believers, but they wouldn't be so strict. And then a lot of things would go by the wayside. Then the next generation, you see what happens? And after a while, it's like we meld together. We're all listening to the same great music, and we don't have any differences. It sounds simplistic, doesn't it? Sounds like an idiotic, simplistic solution. But that's the way life is. You know, it's a natural thing where everything finds its natural equilibrium. And if everyone's out there free and rock and rolling, and this small segment of the world is really strict in this and that, and burkers and all that, let me tell you something. Our troops are not going to change that. But I tell you, that their children, if allowed to be free, a little bit free, to sneak, they sneak stuff in on the internet and they listen to this music and whatever, they eventually become a little bit more liberal. And when I say liberal, don't get me wrong, I'm not talking liberal, politically liberal, but liberal in their thoughts. And then all of a sudden, you have more commonality and you have less war and less strife within these countries. It does take time, but that's the only real solution. My solution is rock and roll. That's how you cure all the nations of the world. I swear, it's rock and roll. It did. Look at the Soviet Union. It actually helped bring the Soviet Union down. You think those kids and the young kids behind the Iron Curtain, wanted to live that way? No, they were sneaking in Elvis Presley records. If they were caught with an Elvis Presley record, they would get spanked or, the hands would be cut off. They did it anyway. Just like my father said, oh, this generation, and his father said, oh, this generation. And they're right. The generations do change. They do become more liberal. When I say liberal, it's liberal to them at that time. We don't have to do anything as far as any religion is concerned, any culture is concerned. It will evolve in and of itself if we would just leave it alone. Because then they don't have a common enemy from which they coalesce and fight. They fight amongst themselves. Believe me, that's the way it would work. Last week I said, we have to start talking more about, planning for ourselves rather than planning with the government. And I'd like to give everyone who listens to this program a little exercise. I'd like everyone to take out a penny, a nickel, a dime, and a quarter. You can forego the half dollar piece because it's very, very difficult to find these days. Put them down in an order and look at each one of those. And you got to figure out, why does the penny look like a copper penny? Why does the nickel look like it's made of nickel? Why is a dime smaller than a nickel? And why is a quarter the size that it is? Think about that. I wonder if anyone knows. They can give me a call at 855-866-1170, and you can also send your email to comments@libertytalkradio.com. Well, when you look at those pennies, originally, our monetary system was set up in a fashion that money itself had some inherent value. In other words, the dollar was backed by gold. You can go to the Treasury. In fact, it said right down in the bill, it says, upon presentation to the Treasury, you will get like amount in gold. Very simple. You can go to Treasury, gave them a $5, $10, $20 piece of $1 a bill rather, and they would give you that equivalent amount in gold. It had value. In other words, when you worked for an hour and made $1, you got, in fact, $1's worth of gold. You had something in kind. You were given something of value for your efforts. Whether you were a manager, whether you dig ditches, it made no difference. You were giving something in kind. And that made sense. And our coinage was the same way. And there's a method to my madness. I hope I can get through this because we don't have much more time. But if you look, the penny originally was 95% copper. The reason why it was 95% copper is because that amount of copper cost about a penny back then. Right? So the penny itself, the copper penny, which is no longer 95% copper, by the way, but 95% copper, was in fact a poor man's gold, if you will. It was worth at least 1 penny. A nickel, 75% copper, 25% nickel. The nickel came out in 1866. It was called a shield, 5 grams in weight. 75% copper, 25% nickel. And so when someone gave you a nickel, they gave you, in fact, 5 cents, or at least 5 cents, worth of value for that effort. A dime, you ever notice a dime is much smaller than a nickel? Wouldn't the dime be bigger? Ha-ha. Contraire, Pierre, in that the dime was made out of silver, a metal that was worth a lot more. So a dime was much smaller because it was 90% silver. A quarter is 2.5 times the weight of a dime, 2.5 times 10 to 2.5 to 25, right? And it was 95% silver. Now, you don't have to memorize that. My point being that in every step, and then of course the $half piece was 90%, and then the dollar piece was 90% silver as well. But they were larger, twice as large. Perfect system. Now, what is the penny worth? What is the penny made of today? 0.8% copper, and the rest is zinc. A penny is hardly worth the penny. A nickel is still worth a nickel. I'm going to come back to the nickel. A dime isn't worth hardly anything because it's not made of silver anymore. It's made of primarily copper, but it's very small. There's very little copper in it. And a quarter the same way. Do you know today a nickel is worth more than twice as much as what a dime is worth? And there's absolutely no silver in a dime. There's no silver in a quarter. They've taken all the silver out. In other words, and of course the dollar bill is not backed by gold. So when you are given something, you are not giving something in kind. However, the only coin I believe in the world, and I've done some research on this, and if someone can tell me otherwise, I'd love to hear from them. The only coin that I found so far in the world, and I've looked at all the major currencies, that still has the same value it had back when it initially minted, in this case 1866, is the nickel. The nickel is still made of 75% copper, 25% nickel. The cost of the metal itself is 5.4 cents. In other words, when you have a nickel, you have more than what it's worth. You have something in kind. If you include the minting, it comes to about 11 cents. So anytime you give someone a dime and they give you 2 nickels, you doubled your money. You gave them something that has practically no value. I think a dime has 2.2% of a little over 2 cents worth of copper in it. All right? A nickel has over 5 cents worth of copper and nickel in it. Now let's assume for a second that the government came out with an edict, what they call a bank holiday. And in this bank holiday, they said, we have to devalue the currency. And let's assume for a second that you're a millionaire, but you have $1 million worth of nickels. Not a millionaire. Let's assume you're a non-millionaire. You only have $3,000. That's your total savings. And you took it out of the bank and bought $3,000 worth of silver, $3,000 worth of nickels, and you put it in storage. And the government came out and said, we're going to devalue the dollar because we can't pay our debts. We're going to issue new dollars tomorrow, and every new dollar is equivalent to 10 old dollars. So if you had $1,000 in the bank, now you have 100. And that's, by the way, that's what's anticipated. That will happen, folks. Don't know when, but that will happen. Now, but you took your money in a bank. You have it in nickels and it's in storage. How much are those nickels worth? You think those nickels became devaluated? No. Those nickels increased in value 10 times. Because now you need a new dollar, right? One new dollar is 20 nickels. But one new dollar takes 10 old dollars. So you just increased the value of those nickels 10 times. See, the government cannot by fiat just say, we're devaluating nickels, because nickel and copper has to be mined. There's an actual value. There's a cost to it getting to the marketplace, just like there's a cost to silver and gold. Silver is a poor man's gold, and I know for most folks, buying any gold today is out of their reach. I recognize that. And even if you had the money, it's very painful buying a gold coin at $1,800 or $1,900 an ounce. Very painful. Silver is still very reasonable at around $34 an ounce, $38 an ounce for a coin, for example. $36 if you buy just a bullion coin, right? It's still within reach. And all the nickel it's a poor man's silver. Now, what would have happened back in 1964 if I had this broadcast in 1964 and I told everyone, save your nickels because they're going to copper next year? Everyone said, the guy's out of his mind, this and that, bada bing, bada bang, bada boom, right? But in fact, people look back, they say, boy, if I've only had those silver coins today, I would be a wealthy person. Well, what I'm telling you today is that if you want to start becoming independent, and let's assume you have very, very little assets, very few assets, you only have a few $100s in the bank, convert them to nickels. First of all, the first thing you do is you actually double your net worth. You have 300. Now, at least it's worth 600. You can't sell it for 600. It's illegal, but you have it, and they can never be depreciated. That's how you start your own central bank. That's how you start divorcing yourself from the system. And I may get in trouble even mentioning this. Now, the Congress is trying to pass a legislation to devalue the nickel. All right, we have someone on the line. Jim. Jim, you're on the line.
Joe, good morning. Jim here. How are you doing today?
Fine, thank you. What's up?
I just want to add to your nickel comment two great benefits. One, obviously, the common man should be able to pick up a roll or two come payday, and you can accumulate it slowly. Like you said, it's much more affordable for the common man than obviously gold. Silver is within reach, but obviously, a $2 roll, if you just accumulate them steady or save your nickels and your change, it will make a difference. But secondly, a lot of people are concerned about when you store precious metals at home, always the risk of theft and robbery. And owning some boxes of nickels, I can tell you that a thief is much less likely to want to haul out your stash of nickels than they would if they found your gold. So, what's kind of a negative by how much weight and how much space they take is kind of a positive when it comes to the risk of theft. So I just wanted to share that, and keep up the good work. Good talking to you, Jeff.
Okay, thanks a lot, Jim. Appreciate it. Hey, Jim brings up a good point, No one's going to say, hey, Bob over there's got some nickels in his house. Let's break in. It's not going to happen. But, just think about it. I read on the Internet, I don't know if this is true, that there is a millionaire, an investment manager, investment guy, who took $1 million, but $1 million worth of nickels, put it away. He says, I never have to worry again about losing my money. I thought that was great. Well, folks, we only have about another minute to go. We want to appreciate you listening in. And remember, we have a website, libertytalkradio.com. Come visit us, all right? And send us your email to comments@libertytalkradio.com. This is the end of today's broadcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors for their financial support, and we'd like to thank you for listening in. Folks, you can further the cause of liberty by recommending this program to your friends and let us hear from you. Our email address is comments@libertytalkradio.com. Remember, you're either allowing your liberties to be taken away or you're striving to protect them. Unfortunately, there is no middle ground. With that, until next time, I'm Joe Cristiano. This is Liberty Talk Radio. Stay well, stay tuned.